Hey guys, John Luxy here, back with, well, I'm back, but I'm not necessarily back with anything necessarily blind. So this is, per a viewer request, actually, this is the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight, by mossbag. I was asked to do a react video to the lore once I finish the game. So, since I'm recording this basically a week or two before, the ahead of time, I guess. I have just beaten the game. I haven't looked anything else up. I haven't looked into the DLC or where to go for that or any spoilers. I basically have no additional knowledge from the point that I finished the main storyline of the game going into this video. My plan next is to go and probably do the DLC, but we'll see. We'll see. So I was asked to do this. I'm not used to doing this, so hopefully this is good, even though I do technically do reaction videos. Like, most of my videos are blind playthroughs and thus have a component of reaction to them. This is a video by someone else, which I'm not used to doing. It is also, I don't know if you've noticed down here, oh crap, I'm like moving my mouse around. It is also an hour and 17 minutes. So that is quite a bit longer than I was expecting. I expected maybe a 30-minute video. And thus this video will definitely be broken up into chunks, especially because I tend to ramble when I talk. And so I don't want this to be too long. So it'll probably be 3 videos, maybe 2. We'll see. I might just sit here with my mouth shut and a dumb look on my face the whole time. We'll see. We'll see. I've watched 20 seconds of the video. That's it. I did some volume testing, and so effectively this is a blind reaction to the video. And yeah, so everything, this is going to go after the main campaign. So everything that you've seen up until this point, that's where I am too. You and I are both on the same page going into this video. I haven't decided whether it's going to be like a bonus episode or not. We shall see. We shall see. Whether bonus as in like in addition to other videos where sometimes I'll just like throw an extra video up on a day or two, or if this will be like an actual main release. But let's enough rambling. Let's get into it. Mossbag, there you go. Warning, this video contains a few spoilers for Hollow Knight. Please bear that in mind before embarking on this journey, or don't. I really don't care. I'm just text on a screen.
If you were to ask me, what is your favorite video game ever made? I would have to say Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS.
This is where I stopped. So you'll have to excuse me. I laughed at this. I don't normally laugh when I watch TV and stuff. I'm like, everyone around me is loud. They're like, ha 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 ha, and I'm just like, so yeah, you've been denied a chuckle from me, and I apologize deeply for that. All right, moving on. So this is a real game, though, right? Cory in the House. I've seen this referenced in like online several times, but I assume it's a real game. I assume it's terrible.
But Hollow Knight would be a close second. Hollow Knight was released on February 24th, 2017 by Team Cherry, an indie game studio based in the mythical land of Adelaide, South.
Just real fast, I don't think I've ever watched the intro to the game either, or the trailer or anything. When I first started the game, I went in completely blind. I didn't even realize it had a story. I knew it was kind of like Dark Soulsian. But that's all I knew. By the way, this is a great point for me to say, go watch the Neryl video if you haven't. He, just as a warning, because everyone that watches my stuff, my playthrough of Hollow Knight, likes Hollow Knight, and Neryl does not. So just a heads up. And also he grades it in accordance with as a Metroidvania game, but I think Hollow Knight is actually not a Metroidvania game. If anything, it's more of a side-scrolling platformer with Dark Souls, like very much like Salt and Sanctuary, right? Where it's a 2D side-scrolling platformer that's essentially similar to Dark Souls, but that's me. And he's making a joke about how it's set in somewhere else.
South Australia. Over the past 3 years, Hollow Knight has become an indie darling. The game has sold over 3.5 million copies. It was the opening game at ADGQ 2019. There's a Hollow Knight book, a line of plushies, t-shirts, nicotine patches, nuclear warheads, and even vinyl records.
I guarantee, even though if that's a real vinyl record, that is sick. But the nicotine patches would be a joke, obviously, but I could kind of see it on like acid squares or something, LSD, you know.
For all you goddamn hipsters. Team Cherry had one goal when making Hollow Knight. They wanted to create a world that allowed players to get completely lost in exploration. We can see this desire in Hollow Knight's design.
Yeah.
The levels in Hollow Knight are massive, with secrets and rewards hidden in every nook and cranny.
See, I found that one. I mean, but some of this stuff I'm going to watch and I'm going to be like, oh my God, what? Right? Which I think is the desired outcome from the recommendation to watch this video. So, yeah, I mean, I know I got 99%. I know it goes up to 112%. I've missed some stuff. I missed the last mask shard. I missed like 5 charms. I mean, technically more based on the Grim Troop, for example. But I've missed some stuff.
Be that powerful charms, special abilities, or...
I got whatever that was. I'm pretty sure. I remember that spot.
The game's navigation...
Wait, hang on. Is there no use for the rancid eggs? I know they're collectibles. But do they literally have no use? That would kind of annoy me a little bit.
The system requires the player to work for their map, forcing them to make a stronger mental image of the world in their head.
Which is
Christopher
great.
Larkin's score and Ari Gibson's artwork
Also
lend
great.
to this as well, creating an atmosphere that the player won't want to leave. But there's one aspect of Hollow Knight that keeps people like me coming back: the world building.
Mm-hmm.
When Super Metroid launched in 1994, it stood out for its amazing sense of immersion. Now in 1994, I was busy not being...
I did mention I'm going to break this into parts because I'm already at like 2 minutes and we're at almost 10 minutes. And Super Metroid was amazing.
a lot.
I sat there and thought for a second because I was like, should I do it for the channel? Should I see if it still holds up? I played it on the Wii when the Wii was popular. I played it on the Wii with like the classic controller. And I don't know, maybe just it seemed really stiff. And so I didn't have the greatest time. But who knows? Also, these clumps right there, I didn't know those were dead bodies until years later. I mean, when I played it originally as a child. Because, you know, I was dumb. Kids are dumb, but I was dumb also. And then on top of that.
But I've watched enough YouTube video essays to know that this game was a big deal. In case you didn't know, Super Metroid is basically the granddaddy of all Metroidvanias. That's why they're called Metroidvanias. Now in Super...
Yeah, something that I had they're called Metroidvanias. Yeah, strangely enough, Metroid games are actually, you could look at them as a form of RPG, because rather than, more specifically a JRPG, I suppose, right? JRPGs, you progress and you sort of have a dynamic difficulty level based on the amount of grinding that you put in. Especially important for earlier ones, old school ones, where you had to grind because you didn't know if it would take like an hour to get into the dungeon to go all the way to the end, and then maybe you'd survive the boss, and then you had to spend 30 minutes to an hour getting out. And when when you're a kid and your parents want you to come to dinner or something like that, and come take the trash out or I'll shut that thing off, or whatever, maybe they just shut it off anyway, or pull the plug or turn off the power or whatever. It's a major commitment, and you want to ensure that you succeed. Metroid is the same way, as well as later Castlevania games that included similar elements, right? Because in Metroid, your character strength is based on not grinding but exploration. The exploration is your grinding, and so that it's sort of, one of the major aesthetics of the game is the exploration as well, but there's a reward for doing so most of the time, and then it powers you up and makes the game a little bit easier, or sometimes even trivial, right? Like with the screw attack. But I just thought it was kind of neat. I had that epiphany. Not that I'm saying I'm amazing or anything, but
For Metroid, there are moments that give the player a sense of depth. Basically, the feeling that this world exists outside of Samus's interactions with it. In the room right before that diabetic crocodile thing, Samus can find the corpse of a random soldier. His inclusion here doesn't change the gameplay at all, but instead gives the player a sense of wonder about the world they are exploring.
Got it. They're saying it's more than just a self-contained thing. There's a world that Samus is in. Sure.
Who was this?
My God, I have to stop interrupting this because I'm saying stuff that he's making the point of. Is that English? I don't know.
Guy. Why was he here in the first place? Did he like jazz? Now, finding dead bodies and other random garbage is pretty cool, right? Well, Hollow Knight basically does the same thing.
What the hell is this? Where is this? Looks like the Royal Waterways.
About a dozen
Could be an entrance to the DLC.
times. Through its world building, Hollow Knight turns Hallownest into a living kingdom. You can sense the ancient history of the land when you look at dilapidated structures or giant barred doors. Nothing feels like it was put into the game randomly. There's a reason for it all. Except those reasons aren't the easiest to uncover.
What the hell is this? Is this a room in the collector's place? What is he doing with the grubs? I was gonna make another point. I don't know.
Hollow Knight's narrative is buried under layers of NPC dialogue, item descriptions, lore tablets, and even additional content like the Quarrel comic and Fangamer's Wanderer's Journal.
Okay, I love outside stuff like this. The Metroid Prime series, the little bonus like art, like some of the concept art and stuff like that you get for 100% scans and all that. That was great. But excuse me. Don't make it essential to the story. And they didn't, right? But it's fine to have extra lore outside, but when it, like, was it Final Fantasy 15 that did that stuff where it's like, oh, you're expected to watch the movie and the anime and do this other thing and that. It's like, I hate that, to understand what's actually going on. Like, make it self-contained, and then the extra stuff can be extra stuff, right? So
These past 3 years have seen an insane amount of research by the Hollow Knight community to make sense of Team Cherry's sprawling world.
Did I just see something about eating ass? Is that, was that one of the pages that they snuck in there? It's not my mind. I mean, it is, but it's not. Okay, 312, 308.
Hollow Knight community to make sense of
How to eat ass theory. Clever. Very clever.
Team Cherry's sprawling
On the green
world. We've even made it to the point where people are looking at the in-game signs to try and decipher Hallownest logographic language.
Which is important because I was looking at that as well. Right? I'm like, do these symbols have meanings?
In this video, I hope to give you a long and detailed look into the world of Hollow Knight, exploring Hallownest's history and uncertain future. When I'm not busy making surprisingly accurate Super Smash Bros. Roster speculation videos, or insightful podcasts about beloved subjects like the Donkey Kong Country television series, or whatever this was supposed to be.
Was there actually a Donkey Kong Country television series?
I'm usually
I don't know if that's a joke or not.
making videos about Hollow Knight, and while I am a seasoned...
Oh, by the way, I guess I should have mentioned this. Yeah, if you like this video, go watch the actual video by the creator. Like, I know there's kind of a... I don't know what the actual... what do you call it? I'm brain dead at the moment. There's like there's a thing that there's stuff that you do when you react to a video. You either, not culture, that's the wrong thing. You either like cut to just your reaction stuff. Like it's considered impolite, from what I understand, to sit there and watch the entire video. I mean, this dude has like 5 million views on this video, so I think it's probably, you don't need me to say, hey, go watch the video. But, you know, if you like it, if you like my reaction to it, go watch the video, give him a like and a view, because that's key. That's all. It's the polite thing.
Hollow Knight lore expert, I cannot confirm that every musing or theory presented in this video is completely correct. I highly recommend checking
And it said, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. That was what that text was.
out the lore section of the Hollow Knight
That's the joke.
wiki
I know.
if you want a more neutral explanation of Hollow Knight's lore.
Sorry, I'm terrible.
But if you're too lazy to read, then I suggest you sit back, order some Domino's pizza, or just grab a block of cheese from the fridge, and enjoy the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight.
I do like cheese. And
It's a simple fact of life that every human worships a god, be that technology, ideologies, or in rare cases, God. As it turns out, the bugs in Hallownest pretty much operate in the same way. From the mosskin born from the dream of a giant slug, to the emo kids of the ancient civilization who literally worship the darkness, there is no shortage of things to worship in the world of Hollow Knight. Our story begins with a creature very much worthy of worship, a creature born from the carcass of a worm. The carcass can still be found in the Kingdom's Edge, and it's our only good look at what worms actually looked like. At the time Hollow Knight occurs, it is suggested there are no worms left in the world. They were incredibly long creatures that featured little to no limbs. Another more mysterious property of worms was that they had some kind of prescience or foresight. Basically, they could see the future to some capacity. It isn't clear how effective this ability was. Considering how the entire race went extinct, this foresight ability must have been pretty shit.
Or it could be like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, where they see the future but they're powerless to do anything about it, you know? There's also that there's also that little fat one where he's like, I'm not a big worm, or something like that. I'm not big enough to be a full worm. Something. Hey, baby cat. Did you see my little cat, Jack, jump up here? I'm doing a video. You want to join me? I will hug you a lot.
Getting back to this particular worm carcass, it is explained that this worm traveled across the distant mountains and wastelands beyond Hallownest. Once it arrived in Hallownest, the worm died. Except not really. Inside the maw of the carcass sits a pale broken egg, out of which hatched a new form of worm. a being of meager shell. This form of the worm is usually referred to as the Pale King.
You know, I have to know how much of this is actual, like how much is speculation and how much is confirmed by the devs, because you could say, I mean, the king's head does kind of look like the worm's mouth, but I thought the king was made from something else, or maybe I'm thinking of Hornet. I don't know.
And he's the character basically responsible for everything that happens in Hollow Knight. The Pale King is a higher being, a type of creature that exists above all others. His body was said to shine with a radiant visage that harmed those who looked upon him. The ultimate goal of the Pale King seemed to be in line with that of other worms. A line from the cryptic Mr. Mushroom reads, "Worms pull bugs into their thrall, till ages pass and kingdoms fall." In other words, it's just in their nature. Dogs wag their tails, cats bury their shit, and worms bring massive amounts of bugs into their service in order to form long-standing kingdoms and civilizations.
Is that true?
And here in a far corner of the world...
Oh, well, I guess so. That's what the mushroom stuff was saying, right?
The Pale King emerged from the corpse of his former self and began to build his eternal kingdom, Hallownest. There's this one slight problem. There's like people already living there. The area that would eventually become Hallownest...
Is this the actual map, or this is the concept art map? This is cool.
...was already filled with mantises, bees, moths, spiders, mushrooms, and bush cosplayers. Each of these groups were already operating with their own cultures and societies, and each group had a different interaction with the Pale King.
Okay, let me pause for a second. I heard my laundry finish, so I just gotta run and take care of that real fast. Hang on, I'll be right back. All right, we are back. I am back. Also, yes, if you, well, yeah, are we back? Yeah, we're back. Okay. Also, yeah, if you're curious, the recording is cut off at the top of the video.
One of the more receptive groups to the arrival of the Pale King were the mushrooms of the fungal wastes. These creatures were able to communicate with one another through one shared mind. The mushrooms viewed this shared mind as a strength, and they were kind of smug dickheads about it. Ultimately, the mushrooms wearily accepted the Pale King's rule, viewing his foresight as a shield to the dangers of the future. Another group living in the fungal wastes is the Mantis tribe. The Mantises have a rich cultural history reaching back to long before the birth of Hallownest. The Mantises are a proud tribe, believing in the importance of proving one's physical strength. The Mantises are fiercely territorial, but will show respect to those who display great power. These Fight Club enthusiasts were led by 4 powerful Mantis Lords, who I guess just kind of sat around waiting for outsiders to...
Just pretend there's another Mantis here. Okay, thanks. Was there a broken throne? Did I miss this?
...to challenge them. The Mantis tribe had no interest in the Pale King's kingdom, but the two communities did come to a truce. In exchange for their independence from Hallownest, the Mantis tribe kept the beasts of Deepnest from invading Hallownest.
Okay, that doesn't make sense though, because... well, he'll probably explain it, but the Pale King and Hera was Hornet's parents, right? So maybe they're... I don't know. Right? Also, I'm sure he'll get into explaining, but the whole... like, what was the deal with God coming back and the whole point of sealing it away? And why the Pale King himself was in a dream? Right? I don't know, maybe it was because the Radiance, like, hurt anyone to look at him. Maybe the worm was the Radiance or something like that, and he didn't want to destroy what he built. I'm sure it'll explain it, or potentially, right? Because it could be like, It could be. I mean, I was gonna say like Dark Souls is fairly, it gives you the pieces, right? But I wonder how much is left in Hollow Knight intentionally vague. That's my question: is how much of this is speculation and how much is, well, this says this, therefore this, right?
Not sure why they didn't just go out the other exits from Deep Nest, but whatever. I'm not an expert on Border Patrol. I don't work at ICE anymore. Let's move on to Deep Nest. Now, many of the different tribes of Hallownest were kind enough to leave lore tablets behind, detailing pretty much everything we need to know about them. Unfortunately, the bugs of Deep Nest didn't do that. We know that the spiders of Deep Nest had a monarchy because why not? Those are always good, right?
Okay, I get it. Insert topical reference to latest scandal involving royal family here. Meh. Not every joke is gonna land.
Also within Deep Nest are a separate group of spiders that immigrated to Deep Nest at some point in the past. This group was known as the Weavers, and they established their own culture and history within Deep Nest. They used looms of silk to weave stories, spells, and shields.
Is this true?
One thing we know for sure about Deep Nest is that they really didn't want anything to do with Hallownest. The struggles of Deep Nest Hallownest relations would become painfully clear as time goes on.
Is that why there was the hidden stag nest, which was added later from my understanding, but did that violate the lore by them adding that hidden nest?
But for right now, it seems like the two remained fairly isolated from one another. Another section of pre-Hallownest includes Green Path. Now, as far as we can tell, the mushrooms, mantises, and spiders of Deep Nest didn't worship any higher beings. There is this giant mushroom corpse in the fungal core, but I don't think this is a higher being. I mean, who the hell would want to worship a fat-ass mushroom? Fat-ass slugs? Now that's dope. The land.
But the mushroom, was that mushroom dead? I thought it was alive. I mean, technically I used the green, or the dream nail on it, and so it could have been a corpse, but for some reason I assumed it was alive, but...
We know as Green Path was created by the higher being known as Un. Un used her great mind to dream the vegetation of Green Path into the once barren caverns. Un's followers, the Mosskin, were also born out of Un's dream.
The other thing is, how were the Mosskin infected if they weren't... I mean, if they worship something else, right? Like, how did they get infected in the first place? That would be my question. If the Radiant was not the one behind creating all of this, then how are the Mosskin infected?
Making her their creator. Green Path at its height was actually much larger than we see in game. At one point, Green Path stretched into both modern-day Queen's Garden and possibly Fog Canyon. Green Path's citizens showed themselves to be a fairly developed society. They built a temple at the Lake of Un in order to worship her, and they even had their own line of defense, with Moss Knights showing proficiency in combat, using nails and shells as weapons. The Law of Un continued to remain in effect even after the Pale King arrived, but it seems like they allowed the king to establish a road through their lands, leading travelers to the heart of Hallownest. Hence the name Green Path. Yeah, Team Cherry really racked their brains when naming this area, didn't they?
It's fine.
Next, we have the bees. And while there is no lore on how these bees can turn into fucking drills, or how they can ignore all known laws of aviation, we do know how they reacted to the Pale King. These bugs decided to seal their hive off from the rest of the world, with only patrol bees being able to enter and exit the hive. So yeah, the bees are pretty much pointless in this story. And finally we have the moth tribe.
Except, I mean, okay, I get the fact, I was going to say the grubs, so the collector must have been able to get in there somehow. That's all.
In-game, the only moth settlement is in the resting grounds, but the tribe might have also inhabited the Crystal Peak at one point. Now, as we all know, moths in real life are just complete assholes. As for the moths in Hollow Knight, well, it's a bit complicated. The moth race is described as being a rather pacifist group, with few ever choosing to take up a weapon. During the Pale King's reign, the moth race delved amongst dreams and the dead, displaying the importance of remembering those who have passed, as well as learning how to shape dreams themselves. Similar to the Mosskin, the moth tribe was born from a higher being known as the Radiance. the Radiance is described as being a light in which the Moth tribe basked. So she was basically a giant lamp to them. Another important aspect about the Radiance is her ties to dreams and a substance known as essence. Essence are the remains of wishes and dreams, and are represented in-game by these dreamcatcher particle effects. Essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well as dream ghosts, both of which are memories taking root in the world. The Radiance appears to be a creature made of essence, but she isn't the only higher being to give off essence. Un has green particles, the Pale King has gray particles, and this sexy character named Grim gives off fiery red particles. However, the Radiance appears to be the main god when it comes to dreams, even if other gods also dabble in the dream realm.
I'm glad they kind of showed this because it didn't click. The Hallownest's crown, like that is a picture of the Radiance. And I guess potentially the symbol of Hallownest as well, sort of, right? Like the little bug thing with the wings on the side and the spikes on the top. I mean, sort of, right? It's kind of like how Christianity and Islam are basically the same god. Technically, yes. What is it? The Sarah or something like that? I don't remember anyway, there was a split when it was Judaism. And then Abraham, I think, impregnated one of his maids or something, and then the wife sent her off and she went off, and then eventually Muhammad came from that, and that's where Islam came from. And then, Abraham's descendants went off and founded, I mean, technically Judaism, but also Christianity. They all worship the same god, but it's just, whatever.
Getting back to the Moth tribe, it is their interaction with the Pale King that we need to discuss. Basically, the Moths turned their backs on the Radiance completely in order to worship the new light that had appeared, the Pale King's light. So yeah, Moths are assholes in this game too. With her tribe forsaking her, the Radiance became a forgotten memory, a remnant of the past, and a thing that's definitely not going to come up again later in this video. And so the Pale King's new kingdom was established, Hallownest. But there is one aspect of Hallownest that we need to discuss. Unfortunately, to better understand this, we're going to have to read some poetry. In wilds beyond they speak your name with reverence and regret. For none could tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch you taught, we changed. Base instincts were redeemed. A world you gave to bug and beast as they had never dreamed.
That's the poem at the very beginning of the game. They speak your name with reverence and regret. Palest watch. We changed base instincts. But let's talk about the Pale King, right?
This is from a poem titled Elegy for Hallownest, written by Motomon the Teacher. The poem appears at the beginning of every playthrough, and hints at what the Pale King and his kingdom offered. Much of the land outside of Hallownest appears to be a wasteland, where bugs survive off of instinct, without the burden of mind. Hallownest somehow taught these bugs and tamed their savagery. Basically, the Pale King changed the instincts of his subjects, and granted them higher thought. To get a better picture of this, let's look at two different characters, Boone and Tuck.
Boone looks like he's from a comic, and Tuck is the one that would sell us the rancid eggs.
These adorable panda bug things give us a clear display of Hallownest's effect. While both appear to be the same species of bug, Boone is dumb as a sack of rocks, struggling to string together words, while Tuck speaks fairly clearly. The main difference between these two characters is that while Boone lives outside of Hallownest, Tuck lives beneath the city's capital. Basically, it appears as though Hallownest is a literal holy ground that raises the intelligence of those who dwell within. The Pale King established a path, starting from the kingdom's entrance in King's Pass, winding through Greenpath and the fungal wastes, and finally ending at the massive capital at Hallownest's heart. We now know the capital city as the City of Tears, but that was likely not its original name. The rain that falls down onto the city from the blue lake above didn't begin until after the kingdom collapsed. So unless the capital
How do they know that? Not that I'm gonna be a little bit pedantic. I'm gonna be like, well, how do they know?
was originally named by some edgy literature student, the name City of Tears wouldn't have made much sense. The king's motivation for all this appears to have been his desire to be worshipped. The citizens of Hallownest believe that the Pale King created the world and everything in it.
Right.
Shrines to the king can be found scattered throughout the kingdom, and king's idols were created and distributed to followers of the king.
Well, I mean, that would also make sense if the king could not interact with anyone, because the light he emitted would hurt them. I mean, that's, you're a god, basically, then. I mean, it also kind of explains, potentially, why he created the Hollow Knights. Because you see the king and the Hollow Knight, well, the other Hollow Knight, interacting before we fall back into the abyss. Did he create the Hollow Knight originally because he wanted a friend? But if also that's the case, that he couldn't touch anybody or see, and he hurt everyone that saw him, then how was Hornet created? You know what I mean? Questions.
Despite the worship, the Pale King often kept himself hidden from his subjects, possibly to hide his blemishes.
Well, we also can't, they're not necessarily providing evidence at this point. I'm going to be a little bit skeptical. I've seen too many wikis where they're like, it's this and this and that. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Oh, just because. It's like, well, you need to show me some in-game stuff. I think we've all seen that. Or not necessarily concrete examples or whatever, but it's at least common enough that we've heard of it, right? Yeah, I don't know. This is good. This is good so far. I'm having a good time. But yeah, I'm gonna be a little skeptical. We also don't necessarily know the king's mind, right? Like the video claims, oh, he wants to be worshipped. Well, we don't know that necessarily, unless they provide stuff. They're like, oh, well, this one mushroom thing says that he wanted to be worshipped. Well, then maybe we know, right? Anyway.
I mean, if you look at the size of the real Pale King to his statue in the ancient basin, the man is clearly overcompensating.
I know that's supposed to be a joke. Statues are always bigger than real people.
The Pale King's White Palace was also built underneath the city, separating him from his subjects even more so. At the same time, certain powers became shunned in Hallownest, though we don't know for sure if the Pale King had anything to do with this. Lifeblood is a blue liquidy substance that leaves those who drink it feeling refreshed. However, the use of lifeblood was seen as a taboo, and those who used it were demonized as heretics.
How do we know this?
The use of soul for combat was also shunned. Soul is a sort of life force in Hollow Knight that animates the bodies of living creatures. But some characters are able to control the soul of others to conjure powerful spirits. But aside from a few exceptions, no citizens of Hallownest ever use this power. However, the Pale King didn't rule alone. There was another higher being in the mix, a being known as the White Lady. The White Lady is a weird brute-like being that can be found in the modern-day Queen's Gardens. She is encased in a strange cocoon, and we know very little about her. With as much exposition we get for the Pale King, there is next to nothing on the White Lady. But one thing we do know is that she likes to breed. Like, a lot. The White Lady would...
Who doesn't? I mean, maybe not breed, but engage in activities that potentially lead to breeding, right? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about.
Often retreat to the Queen's Gardens, an area of land once controlled by the Mosskin. How exactly she walked around and actually went places is a lore question too deep for even my expertise.
She has
The
tentacles.
White Lady is also known as a pale being, along with the Pale King. What exactly are pale beings? Well, we don't know for sure, but they seem to stand out even amongst higher beings.
Another good question is if she and him are both descendants of, like he's descended from a worm, sort of, what is she descended from?
As being even more powerful. I know that's a little confusing, so let's try using an example.
Is that what he just said?
I'd say that regular higher
Son of a
beings
bitch.
are like a TP-Link Archer C7 AC1750 wireless dual-band gigabit router, while pale beings are like the Asus RT-AX88U AX6000 dual-band 8X gigabit Wi-Fi router.
Jesus
Under the
Christ.
Pale King, Hallownest underwent a bit of an industrial revolution. He ordered the construction of the stagways, which were used to transport passengers and goods. The Forgotten Crossroads and the storerooms above the City of Tears were used to store goods that traveled along these stagways. The king also ordered the construction of the tramways, because literally no one is safe from the threat of automation. A tram was built between the Forgotten Crossroads and the resting grounds. A second tram was built from the kingdom's edge across the ancient basin over to Deepnest. And then a third tram was started in Deepnest and attempted to go further into Deepnest. Not sure how useful that would have been to the bugs of Hallownest, but whatever. The Pale King's a smart guy. I'm not gonna question him.
It's also entirely possible that after the king's death, because we don't know how long that is, although, well, I was gonna say it's long enough. One generation, however long that is, probably. It's entirely possible that Deepnest went feral, right? I mean, he mentioned they were defending against the Mantis guys were defending against Deepnest. I don't think that's correct. I think maybe when the king died, everything went to shit. That's why the Mantises sealed off their area. And I don't know if we had to, I think we had to break through, right? The ground we were on collapsed from the fungal caverns into Deepnest. I don't think you can get from Deepnest into those areas until you fall through from above. So it's entirely possible the only way was through the Mantis territory, and the Deepnest denizens went insane because potentially the king himself granted them clarity of thought. Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh my god, food," or something. I don't know.
But
I'm making my own conjectures. That's why I really kind of wish this was like, this is what we know based on these, more deductive. But this is fine. Like I said, I'm having fun. I'm still gonna complain because I'm good at it.
anyway, the Pale King's super smart plan to build
We're only 17 minutes in and we're already almost an hour.
a tram in Deepnest ended up getting a few of his tram workers killed. The bugs of Deepnest rejected the Pale King's attempt to build a tram in their territory, further cementing the poor relations shared between the two groups. Aside from convenient fast travel, regular pathways were also used to cart goods around the kingdom. From this was born probably one of the most important groups in Hallownest, and perhaps even all of fiction. An elusive guild of bugs, simply known as the Menderbugs, took to maintaining the various signs scattered throughout Hallownest.
Is this true?
From the journal entry of one Menderbug, we can catch a glimpse into their ancient and unknowable minds.
Dear, dear diary, isn't life just the most beautiful thing? Fixing signs, mending posts, let them break, I say.
This is a
I'm
joke.
a better mender for all that repairing. I sometimes doubt there's a single bug in all of Hallownest happier than me.
Triple X.
Another example of the Pale King's
Was that a joke about that lady? The one that was laughing?
expanding infrastructure is the Crystal Peak. This area is filled with crystals that grow rapidly along walls, ceilings, and even the shells of certain bugs. These crystals were considered valuable to the bugs of Hallownest, resulting in large-scale mining efforts. We don't actually see the crystals used anywhere else in Hallownest, but they are said to contain a sort of energy, The crystals are also said to sing if you listen very carefully.
I knew there was going to be a joke.
In terms of military,
I love that song.
Hallownest's first line of defense appeared to be a group simply known as the Five Great Knights.
Okay. This is an actual physical location somewhere, but the question is where. Also, it looks like it's made out of crap.
The members of this esteemed coalition were Ogrim, Hagamol, Zamir, Drya, and Isma.
Really?
For being so important, most of the information about these knights has been lost to time. Ogrim is the knight we know the most about, since he is one of the few knights still alive during the events of the game. Ogrim expressed a great amount of loyalty towards the king, and he maybe had something going on with Isma, but we really don't know.
Not Isma. The Pale Lady, right? Or, well, I mean, maybe both of them.
Hagamol was known for his sense of humor and his soft-spoken voice, but at the same time, he was also dummy thick. Mysterious Zamir arrived in Hallownest from a serene land, bringing with her a collection of delicate flowers. At some point, she also got into a relationship with a mantis, but not just any mantis, a daughter of one of the mantis lords.
A daughter? Okay, well, whatever. So this grave, is that the grave we're supposed to go to? Is that the one where we fought the... Who did we fight there? Was that the dude with the scythe?
So yeah, it seems like these great knights were slaying in more ways than one.
Oh.
All we really know about Drya is that she was fierce, caring, and wise. As for Isma, she was described as being kind. She also appears to be some sort of weird plant life form, but there's no information on where she's from or what her powers were. The Five Great Knights play an important role in the Champion's Call, the Knotted Grove, and the Battle of the Black Worm.
What are those?
We have no idea what these events were or how they affected Hallownest, but they sound cool nonetheless.
They do.
During Hallownest's reign, there was another strange area that seemed to exist separate from the Pale King's rule. Carved out of the corpse of an ancient bug, an area called the Colosseum of Fools was constructed, and it was a destination for warriors from outside Hallownest. The sole purpose for fighting in the Colosseum appeared to be simply for glory, with a mysterious figure known as the Lord Fool overseeing the combat. We don't know when the Colosseum was constructed.
Do they know anything about why the Lord Foal is dead?
Or if the Pale King was involved, but one of his servants, the Pale Lurker, became a champion in the Colosseum, perhaps indicating the Pale King's approval. And finally there was the Royal Waterways, where the fecal excrement of the kingdom was washed out into the fungal wastes. This area saw the rise of a species of parasite-like creatures called the Flukes. The Flukes spawned from the Fluke Marm, a giant monster with cavities in which tinier flukes live. There really isn't too much lore involved with the Flukes, but I do need to point out that the Fluke Marm is canonically a MILF.
Why? Also, I assume that's where the rancid eggs came from. The Fluke Marm, kind of. I mean, they come from those weird like looking things.
Like, that's not even debatable. The sky is blue, 2 + 2 = 4, and we all want to fuck this thing.
No.
And so this was the kingdom of Hallownest at its height. Hallownest was a vast kingdom connected by a network of stagways and tram stations. The bugs of Hallownest mourned their dead on the resting grounds, engaged in commerce using Geo, the de facto currency of the region, and a thriving capital located in the middle of the kingdom. The Pale King had succeeded in crafting a full-blown society, but we all know there are pitfalls to living in a society.
Oh.
As the suspiciously knowledgeable Hunter points out in his...
Is that the Hunter? Do we see it at some point? Like, is that actually what... I mean, where do you get this from?
journal, the Pale King had created a population of weak and pathetic creatures. The bugs of Hallownest did not hunt for their own food and had become complacent with their comfort. This is even more obvious with the east wing of the capital. These greedy members of Hallownest's high society became complete cowards, obsessed with riches and plum from excess wealth. The bugs living in Hallownest Prime looked quite different than the instinctive simpletons they once were. Their savagery had been replaced with intelligence, and through that intellect, they gave the Pale King the devotion and service he desired. And while there were a few snags along the way, they were shining times for the king and his subjects. Resting at the threshold of Hallownest is a strange lore tablet, proclaiming Hallownest to be the last and only civilization. It calls Hallownest an eternal kingdom. This appears to have been the Pale King's goal, for Hallownest to stand against a wasted world as a final beacon for civilization. And that was the Pale King's ultimate folly, to think that he could succeed where so many others had failed before.
If he could see the future, then he would have known. Oh, Manny's in REM sleep. He's doing the little twitches and all that stuff. We're gonna go to the end, like probably another minute, and then we'll stop and end this episode, because this is crazy. How am I at 50 minutes when I'm only doing this? I don't know.
Long before the Pale King.
And where is that? Where is this? Wait. I know where this is. This is where the light shined. Right in the abyss? That's what this room is.
Or the Barry Bensons of the world. The land of Hallownest was controlled by an ancient caste. Hints of Hallownest history are littered throughout the land, with the most notable examples being the soul totems and arcane eggs. One sect of these ancient bugs didn't worship a god like the Pale King or any lord, but instead a dark and mysterious substance known as the Void. This ancient caste once also tried to lay claim to the entire land of Hallownest, but they too failed. In his quest to conquer all of Hallownest, the Pale King had made an enemy long forgotten, an enemy that was about to be remembered.
The Radiant?
I mentioned earlier that
I thought there'd be more chapter transitions, but that's okay. Let's stop here. I'll still do another, I'm gonna record another thing. Man, I don't know, this is so long. And yet I have no problem sitting here watching it, but the minute I have to talk, I have to, like, you know, I have to talk. I gotta ramble. Well, all right. Well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this video. If you do like it, for, you know, I guess give me a like, but also definitely check out mossbag and watch this video. It's called The Mostly Complete Lore of Hollow Knight. I think I just did a YouTube search for a Hollow Knight lore, and this was like the first video, the first result. As always, guys, questions, comments, concerns, good, bad, or indifferent, let me hear them. I think BitChute's working. I've only gotten the one message, only the one notification for a message, so I don't know. I assume it's not. I used to get a ton of messages on BitChute, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So I don't know if it works. If I don't respond to you, because I try and respond to everybody, but if I don't respond, come to YouTube, I guess. If you really want a response or want me to see it. It annoys me that I don't see them, but I don't. What is your guys' unique positive moment for today? For me, it's going to be, I guess I'll just go with the alcohol. I just got a bottle. I'm gonna drink until it's done, and then I'll give it up again for a bit, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, but it's okay. It's bourbon. It's all right. That is all. That is all. It's a local. I don't know what you call it. Blend. Local liquor. But that's my unique positive moment. Hopefully your guys are just as good, if not better. Hopefully better, of course. And I hope to see you guys next time. Till then, guys, take care.